What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. Chance and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell and of course DK in the background running the show. In this episode, we're going to discuss what is next for Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So we're going to go through all the possible scenarios and how this will ultimately shake out and kind of give our take on which one we think is the most likely and which one is the least likely. And of course, the one we're rooting for to happen the most. But before we get started, take a second, click the subscribe button, give us a like, and of course, check the notification bell so we can keep you up to date on all your Ravens news. But Jimbo, when you look at the possible scenarios, how many total, and you don't have to list them all, but how many total outcomes really are there right now with where they stand?
Yeah, I think there's only really 4 total outcomes, and we'll cover all of them. But the place that I really want to start, Glenn, is the most cut and dry one, which would be if he simply doesn't sign the franchise tag and he just sits. So if he just sits out this year, pulls a Le'Veon Bell, what that scenario looks like. Just before we kind of get into it, I think this is the least likely of the possibilities of all of them.
Some
I think
former players have suggested he should do this.
Yeah, well, that's because they don't have his best interests in mind. I personally don't want Lamar Jackson to be a sacrificial lamb, and I would prefer that he make money while he's in the prime of his career than not make money. So, as far as I know about this scenario, it's really simple, Glenn. It's if he signs the tag and he plays, he gets his 32 and change. If he plays under that condition, if he doesn't, then he simply doesn't get paid. Now, the important part is that if he plays less than 6 games in the season, then that season doesn't tenure, so it doesn't count towards his franchise tag qualification of that season. So basically, if he sits, it would be as if nothing happened. It's a repeat of this year again in the following year. So doesn't sound like
he would likely play at least 6 games to avoid that possibility.
Right, because I mean, ultimately, if his goal is to leave Baltimore, like, you got to become a free agent somehow if you're not getting traded.
And also, if I remember hearing correctly, that in previous years before this most recent CBA, if a player, say, sat out the first 6 games, he could, once he returned, the team could have the option of giving him all that backloaded money for the first 6 weeks. But recently that's been negotiated out, and that is not allowed anymore by the team. So if he misses those first 4 weeks or however many weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks, he won't be able to get that money back after he returns, is what I heard today. So I think that's an unlikely option for that regard. But also, I think DK has something here that I think even makes it more unlikely. And it's a tweet he's got here when referring to another quarterback in his same draft class. So you can look here, Ross Tucker from the NFL Network, I believe he's with. You look at the career earnings between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. Again, both drafted in the same class, and over $52 million more has gone to Josh Allen because of when he decided to sign his extension, which was as soon as he was eligible 2 years ago. So Lamar Jackson is already behind the 8 ball. So to think he would sit out in a year where he's set up to make $32 million, up to this point, he's only made 25, right? Or 33 right there. So it would be insane for him to hold out and fall further behind the earnings 8 ball than he already is.
Yeah, and I know some people are going to go, well, Lamar's going to make $50 million in surplus and guaranteed money in his upcoming contract or whatever because he waited and he's going to get rewarded for gambling and things like that. But the funny thing to me is that even if he somehow matched Allen, in career earnings, up to the end of next year because of a front-loaded contract and things like that, Allen is already, because he's the way he's negotiating, every time he's negotiating with 2 years left on his deal. So that means in what, a year or 2 years,
back at the table, getting another bonus.
He's hitting it again, right? And if Lamar is going to keep waiting to at the end of his rope with every contract, that's a problem, I think, in a lot of ways, because you're missing something out in the moment, right? So yeah, this is a tough one. That's a sad
So
one to
I would
see.
say that one is unlikely. So I'm going to
Yeah.
say very little chance that he does a sit out, sit in, however you want to label it. I would be shocked. So let's move
And
on.
very last thing, sorry about that,
Okay.
Glenn, is that
Sorry.
it behooves the NFLPA that he plays, in my
Yeah.
opinion. It just really looks
And it
bad for the
doesn't hurt him.
NFLPA.
Look, Dak Prescott came back and under a scenario very similar, playing on the franchise tag, and had a gruesome, horrific injury and seemingly lost zero money because of it. So I don't really see the downside for Lamar either. Even if he were to get injured, doesn't look like the value would be lost.
Right. 100%. Yeah, totally worth it.
All right, so let's get into the next possible scenario. So if he doesn't decide to do the sit out, sit in, what do you look at as another? And it doesn't have to be an order of likelihood, but what do you look at as another scenario?
Yeah, another scenario is he simply plays under the tag.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's that look like?
So to me, this one's interesting because obviously it's 32.5 against the cap. Now, something that's important here is that he's got to sign it, which we just kind of talked about. Most likely he will. But just because he signs it doesn't mean he's doing any extra stuff. There's a couple external factors you have to consider. One, brand new offense. Potentially rebuilt wide receiver room. Bateman will be coming back, but you got Aguilar, and who knows? There are whispers. Obviously, OBJ said himself today he was going to visit Baltimore. That's something he didn't.
Don said they weren't done. They weren't done after Aguilar. Not done.
And so look, there could be some new folks in the wide receiver room. Obviously, every year you get new players on the offensive line at every position, and so and a brand new playbook. So is Lamar gonna? One of the ways it could look as the tag is it seems like Lamar's done being what people see as the good soldier. So he's done, just showing up and doing everything the right way all the time. So does that mean he's just going to do the bare minimum and show up 10 days before week 1 or whatever, is required before he ends up he starts taking fines? I think
what
that's
does he look like when he shows up? Is he look like a guy that's been working, that's in, football shape, that's ready to go, or does he show up and have to get into shape in practice? That's a scary thing too, right? And then the concern is if he has, if you don't have certainty past this season, what's the drive? What's the motivation to come back if you do have, say, a tweak of an ankle or anything, any type of an elbow issue, like similar to what Josh Allen went through last year, where people were worried he might miss some time. He ultimately ends up being able to play through it. What's the incentive for him to try and push it, to come back, to win an important game that maybe gets the Ravens in the playoffs when he knows he has no uncertainty? Would that make him more likely to sit out? That's something. And then does there become resentment in the locker room, even if the perception is that and it's incorrect? Let's say he is hurt. He's hurt to the point where he cannot play. Will there be guys in the locker room going, is this just really because he's like, maybe they're saying, well, I've had an injury similar to that. I wasn't out this long, or is it because of the contract? Then you start having those internal issues.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll mention here too is that I'm just saying it for Lamar's sake, because I know he watches the show. I believe that for his money, it is worth it to swallow the humble, to eat the humble pie, swallow the pill, right? And simply say, all right, I'm going to show up, do my best, to my duty, to my contractual obligation, because this is what's going to look the best for the other suitors, the other teams. This is what they want, right? Like model what they want to see. Not that he hasn't done it, but I'm saying that, like, if you do the very opposite of that this coming season,
there's got to be at least a portion of GMs out there. They're unsure of what Lamar looks like outside of Greg Roman's offense, right? They still, there's got to be at least a handful that want to see, what will he look like under Todd Monken? What will he look like with maybe a rebuilt wide receiver room, even though as of right now, it's really just D-Rob for Nelson Aguilar. I think that you're right. I think if he comes back and says, you know what, I'll play under the franchise tag, still $32 million in a 17, 7 or 18 game checks. He balls out, and then maybe he does get the value he's looking for here or elsewhere next year.
Yeah. So I would say, once again, it is to Lamar Jackson's benefit that he comes in and does things the right way, because I think that's going to get him the best paycheck, whether it's in Baltimore or somewhere else. So that's,
and also DK mentioned real quick, what else can they do to spice up that franchise tag, Jimbo? Because I remember
You're right. So I think now this is where DK, correct me here in the banner if I'm wrong, but I think the third scenario is where they can really start to spice it up.
Okay.
Where the Ravens have until July 17th to reach a long-term deal with Lamar. And if they don't, after that, they can offer him a 1-year deal, right? In which they can get creative. So they didn't give him the exclusive tag, the $45 million. But what if you say, Lamar, look, we're going to give you the $32 million as a base, and then we'll give you, so that way he is incentivized to come in and play good soldier and be a good leader and things like that. We'll give you workout bonuses. We'll give you, OTA bonuses or whatever, however you want to break that down, playoff bonuses, playtime bonuses, things like that.
Playtime, yeah. 80% snaps, you get 10 million more.
Right, to get him up to that 45, we'll say.
Yeah.
Right? That's a third scenario. You could get him a 1-year deal and just give him additional incentivization to get to the yearly amount that he wants to get to.
Is
and
incentivization a word? It sounds right.
I think so. DK,
incentivization?
Yeah, DK thinks so.
It sounds right, but it's just okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah. But I think that's an okay option. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Because you can say, look, Lamar, we didn't put the $32 million tag on you because we think that's what you're worth. We did that because we wanted to give you the opportunity to go out there and find out if anyone would meet your value. And now that you haven't found that, we don't want to give you that $32 million. We want to give you more because we think you're worth more. So, we're going to give you these incentives and make sure that you can reach that number that, may be more happy with. Incentivization is attaching a reward to a given behavior or threatening a penalty for failing to do that behavior. In some cases, incentives are powerful tools to motivate people to take a certain
action. The word is action.
Okay, action. Got you. All right. Well, There you go. It's a word.
It's a word.
All right. Well, I'm excited not excited. I'm interested to explore this next one. So the next one is if they acquiesce, which they have. We saw Chuck Clark request a trade. He got out of here, albeit a year later, because they did convince him to stick around for 1 year with Kyle Hamilton. They let Orlando Brown go after he requested. They let Marquise Brown go after he requested a trade. Hayden Hurst. Everyone who's requested a trade not only got the request, but the Ravens even sent them to a position where they're set up for success. They were not sent to some desert hole in the ground where they would be rotting away. No, Orlando Brown goes to Pat Mahomes in a very friendly, they got Chuck Clark going to the Jets into a top defense. They've sent guys to places to succeed. If the Ravens get to that point where they decide, all right, Lamar doesn't want to be here. We don't want a guy here that doesn't want to be here. So we're going to move him along. What's that look like to you, Jimbo? What type of haul are we talking?
So, and this is where the Ravens have in this particular instance, the Ravens have the leverage, in my opinion, right? Because a team can't simply come in. I know a lot of people are thinking, well, why would they get more than what's offered in the unrestricted, if a team were to come in and give an offer sheet, they get the 2 1s. It's kind of already set up that way. But teams know that the Ravens will just match because ultimately, like we talked about yesterday, they want Lamar Jackson. But if in the scenario they cannot keep Lamar Jackson because he doesn't want to be here, not because they're not willing to match the contract, then they can work out the details of that deal. So if you think about what would happen logistically, Lamar would sign his tenure, his franchise tag, and then the Ravens would trade him for obviously much more than 2 1s. So to me, 4 1s is where you start. And people can say whatever you want. Lamar Jackson is still a 26-year-old MVP. He's how many times do you see a 26-year-old hit the market? Watson got 3 1s. Russell got 3 1s.
I think DK has the banner of the exact details of Watson. So you can see here, Houston traded Watson and a 2024 6th-round pick to the Browns in exchange for first-round picks in 22, 23, and 24, plus a third-round pick in 22 and a 4th in 24.
Yeah.
Which those aren't just simple throw-ins. You talk about an extra 3rd and 4th on top of
talking about Orlando Brown and Dennis Pitta.
Absolutely. Why not? And then even I mean, you take it even further and you look at what Trey Lance, what the Niners gave up to move up a few spots to grab Trey Lance, who'd never thrown a pass higher than Division II.
And who's not even their starter anymore.
Who lost his job to Brock Purdy. I mean, he got injured, but let's be honest. I think I would expect Brock Purdy to be the leader in the clubhouse starting next year and not Trey Lance. So why the hell not? Not just 4-1s, Jimbo. I want some
right.
tail
That's where
end.
you start. Like if somebody calls and offers less than 4-1s,
hang
up the phone.
It's like when Eric DeCosta calls Lamar and offers less than 231.
Right. And he's
bada bing.
Yeah. And look, it could suck for Lamar, but Lamar's agent's going to have to go out. Well, wait, what? Lamar is going to have to go out there and figure that deal out, right? Like,
well, at that point, I think Eric will be figuring that deal out. If he comes to the sign and trade, it's going to be Eric. It's going to be Ozzie. It's going to be those guys. But 4-1s and then some back end stuff, absolutely. But my only thing is, would the Ravens prefer? And I don't know what the rules are here. Everybody's saying this isn't the best year for to draft this guy.
Sure.
Corners seem like it's a great draft, but a lot of positions that the Ravens are needy at, wide receiver and quarterback, don't seem to be the best year to take one. Do you think they could then say, you know what? We don't want this year's picks. We want next year and future. We want down the line and not necessarily like say Indy came and knocking. They don't want the 4th pick this year because they know the best quarterbacks are going to be gone by the time they're picking it for. So what's the point?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's another piece of the pie, right? And just like DK put up on the screen, teams are only able to give up, what was it, DK, for this year and the next 2 years in advance. It's not like the NBA where teams are already trading 2029 first round picks, right? So if you're talking 4-1s, it's
plus 2 years in the future. Okay.
Right. So if you're talking 3 years in total of 1s.
Yeah.
Then if you're only able to throw in 3, if you don't have a 4th from a previous
be some
trade,
2s in there.
Right. You better you better have a player on the shelf that you're ready to move on from. Well, not but like, we're talking a top tier or multiple top tier guys. I don't know, and obviously depends on which team we're talking about as well.
Does this tweet tank any of his trade value? Like, does him coming out and saying, like Aaron Rodgers is like, I want to play for the Jets. And now the Jets are going, well, do we want to give the Packers? He already said he wants to play with us. So why do we have to give the Packers all this money? Could the same effect happen to Lamar? No,
only because the Ravens still hold the cards because teams can't, like the unrestricted the non-exclusive, excuse me. I keep confusing the NBA and the NFL. The non-exclusive franchise tag now allows them to hold the leverage in a trade scenario. Simply does. Because once again, this isn't a situation where, look, this isn't an Orlando or a Marquise where maybe the Ravens were warm on those guys. Yeah. They want Lamar Jackson. So they're going to match if they throw something their way. The only way that team pries them out is if they start talking way more than these 2 picks. The Ravens just simply have the ability to say, no, you're playing for us this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it would be a legendary haul if that's what it came to.
Yeah, like Herschel Walker. Like all of their picks type haul.
Like your whole draft class.
Yeah, just give me your draft class for the next year and 2 years. You can have Lamar. Free and clear.
That's it.
Yeah, that's all we're asking for.
It's not too much, but we'll
Can you imagine? The Ravens have 25 draft picks in the next 3 drafts combined.
Hey, it could happen. I think the team
Oklahoma City Thunder
might go out there. But now I think we need to let's explore the 4th scenario. The one that I am most hoping for, and I don't know where I rank it as far as likelihood, but I am not willing to give up hope. And that is that Lamar Jackson sees the fact that no one is going to reach that value. No one is going to come out and say, I mean, we heard Jim Irsay come out today and says he does not believe in guaranteed contracts. He said it today. He oftentimes will make he's one of the few owners. There's not a lot of owners that you see out there making big time statements. Well, Irsay's one of them. Yeah. And so I got to imagine that he's not alone in feeling this way. So if no one gives him his deal, maybe he will come to the understanding that, wow, maybe the Ravens deal was the best one I can get. And maybe all this running around and seeing if the grass is greener over here. Maybe I should just come here and stay home where I've already risen to superstar status. I've already am entrenched in the community and the fans absolutely love me. Maybe I should just go back and sign that deal and we're all happy, and then I can show up and we can have hugs and everything in the press conference 3 days later. That's what I'm hoping for, Jimbo. What's your thoughts on my optimism here?
I don't think it's bad. I think that so this is the thing. The Ravens know every single detail about Lamar Jackson on and off the field, right? They know who he is as a person, who he is as a football player, who he is as a leader, who he is as a father,
as an agent,
who he is as an agent, who he is as a studier, who he is as a nutritionist, who he is as a sleep doctor. Like all these things, they know everything about Lamar Jackson. They know his habits, they know his everything, right? So I believe that while it might not be Lamar's evaluation of himself or his valuation of himself, what the Ravens are valuing him, I think his highest value is still here in Baltimore. And so really what it comes down to is whether Lamar is too stubborn to believe that, or if really money is ultimately what it is. If an extension gets done, Glenn, I think it's something like a 3-year deal. And I think that, I don't know, this would be interesting to see, is that if within that deal, Lamar says something. Now, look, I'm not saying Lamar doesn't have the intelligence to do this, but he has the lack of experience in negotiating these things. This is his first contract that he's negotiating, right? Like outside of his rookie deal. Does he put some sort of like clause in there where he can't get tagged again? So then the Ravens really have to say, fine, we'll do that. And we'll show you how much you want to be here. You know what I mean? And maybe they sign a 3-year one after that. But I think the only way a deal gets done is if they give him a 3-year deal that's, I don't know,
fully guaranteed.
Like 143, 145 over 3 years.
I would be okay with 3 for 150. I'm okay with 50 a year.
The Ravens are. I don't know.
They may not be, but I'm just saying, a 3 for 150. Why not? I mean, I think you're still going to get. He's 26 years old. You're still going to get a hell of a player. So. But I do you think that is your preferred option still? Or are you still in the camp of I still want Lamar Jackson as the quarterback now and for the future?
I don't know, man. Of course, as a talented player, yeah. But I want Lamar Jackson to want to be here. Ultimately, if he doesn't want to be here, I don't want Lamar Jackson here either. For the sake of him and for the sake of the Ravens, I care about both parties involved. And so if he doesn't want to be here and he's not bought in and he's not the Lamar Jackson of old that was just enjoying himself and liked being where he was at, then why? You know what I mean? It's like when you're in a relationship out of obligation instead of like the want to be in a relationship, like two different people you're talking about here. Right.
Yeah.
So I want Lamar here if he wants to be here. That's really where I'm at. If he wants to be here, yes, give him the deal and then some. I mean, I think the Ravens should just, I don't know. I wouldn't get a Sean Watson deal. Obviously, that was a terrible deal for the league. And Haslam is a joker. That franchise hasn't done anything. And it doesn't even look great. Watson doesn't even look good.
No, he certainly does. And that was the year where his cap hit was $1 or something.
Yeah.
So imagine when that cap hit
in the face of every masseuse that he ever met with.
Yeah, it didn't look good, but I'm still in the camp of I want Lamar Jackson to be here, and I think all this will be forgotten soon after. Once we see him back on the field and a contract signed, I think we'll forget all about this stuff, at least until he hits his next extension time or free agency. But those are the 4 scenarios as we see it. So again,
I just don't want to go through this again. How do we avoid this again? This is stupid.
Yeah, this is rough. And it's turning it's splitting the fan base in half. And that is really the most disappointing thing because, look, we got enough of responsibility fighting off the silly, just ridiculous Bengals fans that somehow are got their chest puffed out when they haven't won anything. We don't have to have inner fighting. We need to just keep our defenses up for outside noise. But right now, there's a lot of infighting going on, a lot of civil war currently going on right now inside the Ravens fan base. And so I'm hopeful it gets resolved and we can all put this behind us. But I think we've pretty much outlined the 4 possible scenarios, the sit in / sit out scenario, the franchise tag, whether that's the original or if they try and spice it up on the back end and put some incentives after that. Was that June 17th deadline or July 17th deadline?
July 17th, yeah.
They could trade Lamar Jackson, and we talked about the haul that we expect in return if it gets to that point. And then, of course, the one I'm hoping for the most is the extension. But let us know if you guys think of another scenario and kind of how do you rank them in the likelihood in which you think these will happen. And we'll certainly interact and look forward to seeing your comments below.
See you.
Yesterday does not matter. You're looking forward to today.
I'm looking forward to being a Raven.
What are they getting?
Everything out of me. They're going to get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that.